Everyone, welcome to Australian Book Travels and to our sneaky midweeker. We haven't had one for a little while, I know, but this is a special one. We, as you may or may not know, if you've been watching the channel over the last few weeks, I travelled to Sydney for a book launch. Along the way for the channel, I have taken footage of different towns that you will see on the channel over the coming months. But primarily I was in Sydney or around Sydney for a very special book launch. And so the idea was that I would almost have a travel log, a vlog, as they say. Is it travel vlog? Showing you adventures along the way other than the travel videos that will be uploaded each Saturday over the coming months. It was meant to be a travel video to show you along the way, camping and driving and doing all that sort of thing until we arrived at the book launch. A few things happened with that. First of all, I was on my own. As many of you will know, I did have to take the journey on my own without the dogs and without Mark. And I ended up camping, which was fine. That's good. But I just felt that along the way, the practicality of videoing and talking into the camera or talking as I was driving was just too dangerous on my own. And so I decided not to do that. Also, when I arrived at the camp, which was wonderful, it was a managed camp in Mossvale, Mossvale will be on the channel in the coming months. But when I went to the managed campsite, I think I was the only tent there. There were a whole heap of other permanent sort of holiday accommodation units, and there were also caravans. Now, some of them were holiday makers, some of them were workers who were fly in, fly out sort of workers where they came down from Queensland and they were doing a job down here and then they fly out for the weekend or fly out when the job's done. So when I arrived and I realised I was the only tent, that was okay. I was protected by the caravans around me, but I did feel a little self-conscious to be videoing and talking to myself in the tent. So I thought, well, that wasn't really conducive to good neighbourly relations with the other campers. And also, after the first night, I was so tired. I'd been driving all day and I had been filming for the channel. I erected the tent. That was all good. I didn't put the secure fly ropes down because I was really protected and I didn't need them. That was all okay, except, cut a very long story short, the tent leaked. It started raining. It was a very fine mist. And by the morning I woke up and there were puddles of water in the tent. I didn't mind that so much. Things were a bit damp, but I then realised that a beautiful magazine that I had on the ground of the tent was damaged, and also my suitcase, which is a really old suitcase, it's the hardened cardboard, that was a little bit damaged too. So I then packed everything up. I asked if there was a holiday unit available in the campsite, and there was one available for a couple of nights' time, but it was something like $300. And I thought, look, I'd rather sleep in the car, to be honest, because it wasn't giving me that consecutive security of being able to stay in it for the few nights. It was only one night. And I was tossing up what to do for the next few nights. Anyway, the campsite, when I went out, and I went really early morning, I went out, I drove around, and I thought, look, I'll worry about the tent at the end of the day. I won't worry about it right now. By the time I did get home that evening, or I say home, by the time I did get to the campsite that evening, everything had dried out. And I thought, oh, well, that's good. So I didn't put everything back in from the car to the tent. I actually just had the bed and a table that I was working on with my computer. But the same thing happened that night. It was really wet. So when I went out on that third day, which was the Saturday, I was trying to figure out what I would do. And I thought, look, worst case, I'm going to have to sleep in the car, whilst I still had the facilities of the campsite. So I still had all of the shower facilities and the conveniences and things like that, and being able to cook and all that sort of thing. So I decided to stay at the campsite, but I thought, well, what am I going to do? Worst case, I am going to have to sleep in the car. So that was all well and good. I thought, right, that's fine. And I spoke to some family members and said, that's probably what I'm going to have to do. And when I arrived on the Saturday night, after filming and travelling all day again, everybody else had left. All of the caravans around had left me, and I was just a single tent in the middle of this campground with no protection. And a storm was brewing for that evening, which was another reason why I thought I'm going to have to sleep in the car. And by the time I got back to the camp and all of these campers had gone, the wind that had started up in this storm had totally flattened my tent. So I honestly, I was so tired that night from 3 days of travelling around and intense travelling and intense filming. I decided that I just packed up that tent and I slept in the car for the next 2 nights. I was so, and in actual fact, it was really comfortable. But I just, when I saw the tent was totally flat and everything, even that some of the tent pegs had been ripped up out of the tent, I just thought, look, I'm just going to sleep in the car. I did not have the energy to erect the tent back up. And luckily I didn't, because a really big storm did come through on the Sunday night after the book launch, and it was torrential. So I really was better off in the comfort of the car. But it did feel very strange. At least I was on my own. That was a good thing, because then it was not an inconvenience to Mark or the dogs or anything else. It was just me. So I went to the book launch and on the Sunday, and this is, I went to a town. The rest of the video that you will see after this will show you some of the town that I went to where the bookshop and the book launch was based, which was really, really close to, it was only maybe 10 or 20 minutes from the actual city. It was an hour and a half from where I was staying at the campsite. And there were 2 bookshops. Before I went to the book launch, you'll see in the video, I think it was Elizabeth Books, and I bought Murder at the, no I didn't. Yes I did, I bought Murder at the Abbey, and then I bought a blind date with a book, and opened it up, and it was this one, Vera, by Carol Ajarian, and this one is by Frances Evesham. I will let you know how those books go. I'm very excited about those. But the real story as to why I'm here now and doing this sneaky midweeker, the book launch was for Tanya Blanchard. If any of you have heard of her, you should have, and I'm sure you would have. She has written a number of books. Her first one was, the first one in this sort of 2-part books is A Woman of Courage. Absolutely, the covers on these books are just absolutely beautiful. They are paperbacks. You know I love my hardcovers, but they are published in paperbacks. Now, I don't want to go on too much about this because it is really about the book launch of the other. This is about Hannah, who is our protagonist, and we get to know her and her friends and what it is like in the early 1900s in England. You will possibly hear in the rest of the video at the book launch Tanya Blanchard speaking about her impetus or her the catalyst that began this story. Really involves her family history, which is really interesting. And the cover itself on this book and the book for the book launch, on these books, there is a reason for the colours. There is a reason for the way the woman is standing, and I will tell you about that in a second. But this is the two books. This is the book, I'll show you because then it will make sense. This is the book for which the book launch was for. This is Tanya Blanchard's An Undeniable Voice. Now, they can be read alone, as standalones, but this is a continuation of this. But you don't have to read this to read this. Now, the colours on these books and the reason for the way that the cover woman, the woman on the cover is standing, is for a good reason. I'm not going to tell you because when you get to read them, you'll understand. This is 1900s. We get to know Hannah and her friends and her story and the beginnings of a movement. The way people work, their loves, their losses, and also how women, primarily how they were treated and how they felt, and the beginnings of the suffragette movement. Ta-da! We come to this one. This is really about the suffragette movement and how women reacted and how women were treated as they were trying for the vote in England. We have the follow-up protagonist and how her life is changed and how it changes because of the suffragette movement and her feelings for that now that she has moved on in her life. I haven't read this one, so I'm not going to go on about this one, although the book launch was for this one, but I have read this one. Now, the writing is superb. The characters are beautiful. You warm to them. They're really, you can definitely empathise and sympathise with them. They're us. They're us just in a different era. You know, as a woman, this is who we are. This is who we are. And in actual fact, this novel, according to Tanya at the book launch, and we were discussing this actually, which you won't see in the video because I did cut the camera for part of the, but I'll go on about that in a minute. This is really the content, the content and the storyline is very pertinent for today. And when you read it, you'll understand why. It was explained by Tanya, what happened and what went on. And we were all of the participants were discussing how that is relevant today. So I won't go on about that, but it is, this is available to purchase. I would suggest you do. I like the fact that they're standalone, but I like when there's a follow-on story, I do like to start at the beginning. So I recommend this one, The Woman of Courage. It's absolutely beautiful. You will love it. I have no reason to doubt that I will love this one. I will get into this probably after Christmas, but because I love this one so much, I just had to buy this. And of course, my books were signed. Thank you very much, Tanya. I absolutely loved it. And this one is signed too. So that was wonderful, the book launch. Now, Tanya was in conversation with another brilliant author. You know I love her if you've watched this channel for even in the last few weeks. Now, these are Australian authors. These ones are set in England, where the real suffragette movement suffered greatly. This is an Australian story, Australian author, Australian setting. Now, Kira interviewed Tanya. They are good friends, and she did a wonderful job. Not interviewed, but really it was a conversation between Tanya and Kira. I took my book with me, and I had her sign it, which I was very excited about, very excited. If you have followed me, and if you have watched the channel where I recommended this a few weeks ago, it was quite a few weeks ago now, I absolutely love this. It would have to be one of my favourite novels of all time. It is absolutely beautiful. It weaves in a story about Henry Lawson, the drover's wife, and a number of other artists. You could not get, they always say never meet your heroes. This could not be more wrong in this case. Tanya Blanchard and Kira Geddes are two of the most beautiful, giving, thoughtful, patient, understanding, generous, beautiful people, and they are brilliant writers to boot. So it's sickening. They're just so beautiful. I was so chuffed when I met them. They just couldn't have been more welcoming and more appreciative that I had travelled up for the channel. They now follow us on Instagram and the channel. They genuinely are two beautiful people. Now, so obviously I recommend these books. The Woman of Courage, definitely, because I read that. I have no reason to think anything different of An Undeniable Voice. It's absolutely beautiful. Well, The Woman of Courage is absolutely beautiful. And of course, The Story Thief. Now, whilst I was there, I was introduced. I did not know. Had I known that she was going to be there, I would have taken my novel along with me. But Sandy Docker, another Australian author, she's written quite a few books actually, but this was her latest, The Lyrebird Lake Ladies Choir. I will talk about this in future. I haven't yet, just because I haven't got around to all of the books that I have read. We'll never catch up, but I will do this in perhaps the next month or so. Perhaps even just after Christmas, once we get over the Christmas books and Christmas rush, I will be discussing this. But Sandy also is a beautiful, really, she's a beautiful writer. The story is fantastic. I love her writing too. That's why I have her novel, and that is why I'm going to recommend her novel on the channel. But these three ladies are genuine. They're just beautiful. I was really, I don't know about shocked. I think that's awful to say shocked, because I don't know. It's not as though I was expecting them to be anything horrible, but sometimes people can be standoffish, or they're busy with the book launch and with interviewing, and they're busy listening. You don't expect them to take time out and to really, Kira and Tanya actually gave me 45 minutes before the book launch to sit and chat and get to know each other, and we had a cup of tea, and then before we knew it, the book launch was everyone was arriving for the book launch, which you will see in the rest of the video. But these three ladies, if there's any reason to read these novels, it is because they are genuinely beautiful people. Not just because their writing is lovely and accessible and interesting. The stories are great and funny and witty, and thought-provoking, all of those wonderful adjectives and descriptions. But they are genuinely beautiful ladies. And it was just a pleasure to meet all of them. Now, all of the people who were at the book launch were really lovely people. I understand that there were a couple of other authors there. I didn't get to meet them, sadly, because when I parked my car, I was in a 2-hour parking bay, which I thought was well enough, but it actually cut off half an hour off my chatting and the book launch. And at the time I didn't really think, but because I'd already spent an hour and 3/4 with Tanya and Kira, I thought that would be, well enough, that it would be okay. But I was sad to leave. The parking officers were vigilant. I saw them booking people as I left. I parked my car and left to the book launch. So I was feeling a little anxious about getting to the car. I did not want a parking ticket. So I did have to leave a half an hour earlier, or I think I left 20 minutes earlier or something than I really wanted to. But that's what happens, unfortunately. The area in Newtown where the book launch was held was just absolutely bumper-to-bumper traffic, as you'll see in the video, and just parking everywhere. It was very hard to get a park. I had been warned by Kira that it was hard to get a park, but I didn't realise how difficult. So I just took what I could get, and then I did have to leave. I think it was 20 minutes earlier than the official time. I don't know how much longer actually it went on for after I left. But you'll see in the video, the book launch was held at Better Read Than Dead bookshop. An absolutely fantastic bookshop, and I did buy a number of books as well as Tanya's books, and I was able to buy a couple of these for a friend of mine as well, and I bought these too, but I read A Woman of Courage, so I haven't read An Undeniable Voice. It was an absolutely brilliant bookshop, and as you will see, we paid $5 for that book launch to attend it, and they set up the table. There was champagne, there was cake, there were nibblies, there was tea. It was absolutely beautiful. All kudos to Better Read Than Dead bookshop in Newtown near Sydney. Ben, our host, was absolutely wonderful. He was really helpful and welcoming. You'll see him in part of the video. He introduced Kira and Tanya. But honestly, these three ladies, please do yourself a favour. If you haven't read any of these, do so, because now I can tell you genuinely that these three authors are the most beautiful women inside and out. They are so, I just can't gush about them enough. I think they're really beautiful, and it makes the story and the novel that you're reading all that more beautiful. In fact, I feel like reading these two, particularly again, I'll have to read An Undeniable Voice first, but I feel like reading these again because now I know the authors and their voices and their stories, part of their stories, and because I know that they're such beautiful people, it just makes the writing all the more better. Anyway, enough about that. The book launch was for Tanya Blanchard's An Undeniable Voice. This is by, hang on everyone, I'll get my goggles on. This is by HarperCollins. I did speak to the publicist from HarperCollins, and I am in discussions with them at the moment. I am on their list actually I'm hoping to receive their advanced readers copies of any of their books. And Tanya put me in contact with Caitlin from HarperCollins. So these ladies were so supportive of the channel and what I'm doing that they wanted to help me in any way possible. And thereby they're helping all of us. They're just beautiful, really lovely women. Sandy Docker's The Lyrebird, Ladies Quiet is Penguin, and of course Kira Geddes is Affirm Press. They're all substantial sizes. Even A Woman of Courage is, I think they're all about 300 pages. Absolutely brilliant. Do yourself a favour, if you haven't, buy them now for yourself, buy them for yourself for Christmas, or buy them as gifts. They are brilliant. So that's those. I will leave you now for the rest of the video. I'm not giving you any history of the town. We're just doing a walk around. There'll be a bit of music involved. And then towards the end, I'm showing you parts of the book launch for Tanya's book, An Undeniable Voice, and then I'll leave you at that. So I won't see you at the end. I will say goodbye now and leave you to watch the rest of the video. I hope you enjoy it. I was very careful on how much I videoed of the book launch. I did not want to really be seen to video the whole thing. I didn't want it to look as though I was trying to do something for the channel at anybody else's expense. I was also very mindful of the other people there. So you will see snippets of it. It was an absolutely brilliant book launch, absolutely brilliant women. I just wish I'd had time to spend more hours with them. And whenever I can catch up with them, if they're at another book launch, I will definitely be wanting to catch up with them. You can get on Instagram and follow all of these authors on Instagram. I recommend that you do that because they'll give you the heads up of any new books coming out or any other book launches around that they attend. And yeah, thank you very much to Better Read Than Dead bookshop in Newtown. Thoroughly enjoyed it. We sat upstairs in the bookshop. It was a beautiful bookshop. It had a whole range of books, really unusual, and some of them that we have seen in other bookshops, but also a lot of books that were unusual. So brilliant bookshop. They hosted the book launch really well. Okay, people, I will leave you. I will see you hopefully at the next travel video. If not, I will see you on Monday for the book recommendations. Take care. Enjoy your Christmas, everyone, or the preparations for Christmas, and I'll see you next video. Happy reading. Take care. Safe travels. Bye for now. It's my pleasure.
We're very excited to talk about Tanya's newest book, An Undeniable Voice, the standalone sequel to A Woman of Courage.
Thank you, Kira. Beautiful words. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Cheryl, for coming all this way. I really appreciate it on this hot, summery November afternoon.
It was meant to be raining.
Crazy weather.
Two short stories earning a VC's Award for Academic Excellence. The story features my debut, that's also available today, and it is a culmination of almost a decade of research and writing when no one had desk Kira can be found visiting one of Sydney's many art galleries or daydreaming about future travel.
Inspired by the true stories and the rich cultural heritage of her family's history. And in fact, Tanya and I share the same kind of mix of German-Italian heritage, which I think gives us as authors the perfect blend of passion and ration. And what I mean by that is Mediterranean passion and then North European rationalism. So, and I guess that's what you need in historical fiction. You need the feeling, but also the fact and the research and all that. Right, so aside from that German-Italian background, with these latest two novels, A Woman of Courage and its just released standalone sequel, An Undeniable Voice, Tanya's taken things in a different direction, and she's been inspired instead by her husband's side of the family, who hail from northern England, including her discovery of one particularly inspiring female family member who sparked the character of Hannah. Tanya will tell us more about that. And Hannah is the wonderful protagonist of both these novels. So I absolutely loved reading, following Hannah's journey in Undeniable Voice, in A Woman of Courage, where we first meet her in 1890 as a young, idealistic woman who dreams of a future where women have the right to vote. And if you haven't read it yet, I highly, highly recommend it. And you can do it in either order, but since you're here, I would suggest you both. So I was really happy to dive back into Hannah's world in this brand new book, An Undeniable Voice, not only to share in Hannah's personal journey, but to get a bird's eye view of the women's suffrage movement. And it's such a funny word, suffrage, isn't it? And in this case, the suffrage movement involved a lot of suffering from British women because it was a long and drawn-out struggle. So I'll be asking Tanya to tell us a lot more about that in detail shortly. But I thought, first of all, maybe Tanya, you'd like to start by telling us a little bit more about the family inspirational story behind these novels.
I can do that. Thank you so much, Kira, for that lovely introduction. Yes, so as Kira said, I decided to turn towards my husband's family stories with these last two books. And I remember many years ago sitting down with my father-in-law over a cup of tea by the fire. He used to brew it in this beautiful tin teapot and he grew really strong, so it was a strong black tea, if you like that. And we both loved it. And he'd sit down, and he was such a fantastic storyteller. He kept all of his family stories. And he was telling me how his great-grandparents owned a pub in Durham in the north of England around the turn of the 20th century. And how they were just absolutely loved how his great-grandfather ran this pub and owned it, and they're very, very proud of him. And I'm thinking to myself, I wonder what kind of life they would have had in Durham at the turn of the 20th century, a very coal mining area, but apparently there was an agricultural town as well. And I wanted to know a bit more about his wife, Eleanor, who would have been the wife of a publican. And I asked him about her, and he didn't know very much about her at all, except that she was a wife and mother. I thought, oh, okay, this is good. I'll find out a little bit more about her. I spoke to his cousin in Durham, who still lives there, and Eleanor was his grandmother, and he only knew her as an old lady, really, and didn't know very much about her story as a young woman. So it just got me more and more intrigued. So I decided to do a bit of family history stuff on Ancestry, looked up some documents and put her name into the search, and I found the census documents for 1893. And it showed that she was actually living in the very same pub that her and her husband were running years later, which I found really, really interesting. And the other fascinating thing was that she was also a school teacher. So I wondered why I didn't hear anything about this story about the family, the pub coming from her family originally and handed down to the Blanchards, and how that had been lost in translation along the way of the storytelling until it got to me. I thought, okay, this is just another example of women's stories that just disappear from time and never get retold. I thought, okay, I'm definitely writing a story about this woman. I did a bit of research around the 1890s and discovered that the suffrage movement was beginning to really take hold in the UK. And this is about women trying to get the vote. And I discovered that also that teachers were very, very influential in this movement, very highly involved in getting the vote for women and women's rights across the board as well. I thought, okay, so Eleanor was a teacher. I wondered whether she was involved in the suffrage movement. And I did a little bit more digging and also learned that Britain didn't get the vote for quite a long time compared to, say, Australia and New Zealand. And New Zealand was the first country in the world in 1893. South Australia was the second in 1894, and also the very first place that allowed women to enter Parliament as well. So that's a big plus for us here in Australia. And it was at least another decade after that until Britain started to think about getting the vote for women. And I wanted to understand why that was the case, why it took so long. So it's time to blend those two stories together. And that was the original inspiration for both books.
And I love her name though, Eleanor Blanchard. Like, it's a shame you couldn't have kept her name.
I know. From an agricultural town to a coal mining town. And this is based on the actual village that my husband's great-great-grandparents lived in. Okay, so it was the day before the Everfield Agricultural Show, and after setting up and organising the Ox and Ploughs refreshment stall at the showground, we turned our attention to our dogs. When Roger had talked about entering Duke and Shandy into the show, the children had been so excited by the idea and wanted to be involved. There was no backing out after that, and Roger had entered both in the 2-year-old retriever category. "Dukey!" squealed Annie, up to her elbows in soap suds, as the dog shook, spraying her with water. "It's just a little water," said Tommy with a grin, as he kept hold of Shandy and continued to wash her, scrubbing behind her ears and under her chin. "Here, let me help you finish washing him," said Roger. Duke was a big dog for Annie to manage. He came up to above her knee. Suddenly, Shandy slipped through Tommy's fingers and made a run for it. "Get her!" yelled Roger. William and I ran after her, Tommy in hot pursuit. Soap suds and water trailed in Shandy's wake. "Got her!" shouted William triumphantly, chucking the dog in the corner and holding her tight. I smothered a laugh as Shandy wiggled and squirmed in his embrace until William was as wet as she was. I popped the lead around her neck. "Come on, Shandy, let's get you clean," I said, glad that she followed immediately back to the tub. We now had 2 wet dogs and soap suds all over the children. It was a balmy evening in August, so it didn't matter. Tommy, you help Annie rinse Duke, or I help William rinse Shandy, said Roger. Maybe you should toss the children into the tub as well, I said. We're not dogs, said Annie indignantly, pouring water over Duke's smooth black coat. I did laugh then. No, you are not, I agreed. I think it would be fun, said Tommy, splashing Annie with water. Annie squealed again, and Duke took his opportunity to escape, but I was ready for him with a big towel. Come on, Tommy, said Roger. Leave your sister alone. I need you to help dry Shandy while I empty the tubs. Soon both dogs were damp rather than wringing wet, and chasing each other around the room, barking with excitement as though they revelled in their new cleanliness. We all laughed at the spectacle, and then Annie, Tommy and William began tossing the ball to the dogs, who attempted to catch it, dogs and children as boisterous as each other. Roger put his arm around my waist as we watched the joyful chaos. Good to see them having fun, he said. It is, but who thought we'd have a pack of geese for children? I shook my head as we both began to laugh. And the reason I chose this also is just to show that Hannah now has this growing family. So Annie is nearly 12, Tommy is 10, and William is nearly 8 years old. And they're busy running the pub, and their family life is really important to her, which you'll see how that affects her in her life throughout the rest of the night.
No, I think that